All right. Hello, my name's Steven. I'm here because my wife thinks I'm smart. It's nice to have a wife who thinks you're smart. Let us begin. Our subject is what I call the doom meme. Now, a meme, as I'm sure everybody now knows, is the analog to a gene that was created by the geneticist, who's Richard Dawkins, to stand for one kernel of an idea that tries to replicate itself through society. So the doom meme is the idea we're all doomed. Yes, doom on. This is about economic doom because that's my field. Money is interesting enough. Other people can handle the viruses. This starts with me over 30 years ago. I was a grad student at the University of Chicago, laboring under Milton Friedman and all the boys, and I had a little carol down in the basement of the library about 50 yards from where the first nuclear pilot was built, which probably goes to explain a lot of behavior in the economics department. And I came to the realization of two things. One, we were spending more than we took in, and we were being financed by our trade partners, and we were spending that money on defense, which is a sort of a nice term for protection racket. So I've characterized the American economy as a Ponzi scheme backed by a protection racket. And that was realization number one. By the way, first I have to tell you, the reason I went into economics is I was a code monkey, and I didn't want to be a code monkey all my life. And I thought, wow, why be a code monkey when I can be a pundit? The second idea that I came to down there near the old atomic pot was that the government would cheat. In those days, the big new idea was indexing. Social Security was indexed to the rate of inflation. Labor contracts were indexed to the rate of inflation. Benefits, everything was indexed. That's great. But what if you cheat on the index? Now, as it turns out, at the exact moment I had that thought, Arthur Burns, who was then head of the Fed, was doing exactly that. He was rigging the system. And we've been doing it ever since. There's a website, if you'd like to go, called Shadow Stats. You can find it on your own, which more or less gives you what the real inflation rate is, if you'd care to know. So we've been cheating. This is the kernel of doom. You and I have been living pretty well at the expense of the rest of the world, enjoying it. And at some point, it comes to an end. And so the question is, how do we continue living very well when the rest of the world gets onto it? Thus, the doom meme. The doom meme is a very simple idea. As the Treasury Secretary, Herb Stein, said in the early 80s, whatever can't go on, won't. And our lifestyle can't go on at the expense of the rest of the world. And the rest of the world, who after all, I mean, they've seen Baywatch, they can't live like us either. There's simply not enough Pamela Anderson to go around. The question is, given the doom meme, how do we continue living as if we were exploiting the rest of the world when we are no longer able? That's the question. And it's sort of a hobby of mine, but also I have an interest because I want to continue to sit in this comfortable chair and spouting, get paid for it. So, hence we study the doom meme on an ongoing basis. The first principle of any punditry that you have to know is that everybody talks their book. What does this mean? People have positions. They have positions in the market. They have intellectual positions. They have reputations. They may have political affiliations. So everybody forms a set of opinions around what they have made commitments to. And it's very hard to change a commitment. But we're going to have to talk about what their book is. I'll give you an example. There's a guy named Peter Schiff. He's pretty good, but he has a brokerage house, and he tends to sell a certain kind of investment. He also has 2 books. One is better than the other. The second one I threw in the trash last weekend. But he's pretty good. Until you understand his brokerage and the kinds of products that he tends to push, you don't understand Peter Schiff. And we can go down the list. I mean, this evening, in the last hour, I read some screed from Forbes, Stevie Forbes, who's kind of an embarrassment to everybody, saying that, if the new administration knew what they were doing, they would target gold to $500 an ounce. It's just very stupid, but it fits Steve Forbes' personal agenda. He has the book. He has his own identity, his politics, and probably his investment strategy as well. Although, believe me, he owns plenty of gold. I am always reminded in class, Milton Friedman, this was a couple years after we went off the gold standard. And somebody said, okay, if our money only represents the promise, of the government, the full faith and credit. I just love that phrase, don't you? The full faith and credit of the United States. If that's all that the dollar represents, well, what really gives it value? And Milton Friedman barely stopped a beat and he said, well, you can pay taxes with it.